Hello everybody and welcome to episode 6 of For Those About to Pod, We Salute You. On this week's episode, Matt and I will be going through our favourite live albums. Our My Year in Rock is 1983, and we'll also be going through our latest news and some hidden gems for you. As always, if you like what you hear, please subscribe to our podcast via Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and your usual podcasting services. You'll find us on Twitter and you'll find us on Facebook as well. As always, I always like to kick off the show with my partner in podcasting, Mr. Matt Rogers. Happy New Year, Matt, and how are you, mate?
Hello, Brian. Happy New Year to you too. It's been a while. It's been a while since we spoke. But it's nice to catch up. Our first one of 2021.
It is indeed, absolutely.
Which is nice. We were talking that we might be inundated with gigs this year, not being able to do many podcasts, but as yet that hasn't started to kind of manifest itself.
No.
So we are here still in our houses, chatting away.
Looking forward to the time when we can do a podcast where we go, and here's a show that we were at that we reviewed.
Or we do one in person. That'd be fun. We could do it kind of, in the same room.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah, we could do it in a pub, maybe.
We could do it with a pub with a live audience.
Hey, that's a good idea. Oh, now you talk. Trouble is, we might get heckled because every time we get something wrong, which we tend to do quite regularly, some clever person, called Dick or Richard, might shout the right answer. So I like the idea of that. I do like the idea of that. It's a very good idea. Did you just think of that?
I just thought of that.
I think that's great.
I see. Okay. When we're allowed to
that idea. Well, as the Americans would say, let's put a pin in that one.
Okay, excellent.
For another day. Anyway, so what has caught your eye lately, Brian?
In the news, so what was very interesting just before Christmas, the head honcho, Serafino, of Frontier Records, put a nice little note out to everybody who follows Frontier Records just around all of the up-and-coming projects for 2021. And two caught my eye. Number one is a bit of a surprise because I thought this band was done and dusted and not recording anymore. Giant.
Wow.
Giant are slated, I think they're slating the release. So they're planning to release an album in 2021. Giant, I'll put some stuff up on the podcast playlist from their first album, which is probably their best, which is Last of the Runaways. Giant, great band, fronted by Dan Huff, who played guitar and did the singing. I think I would say Dan Huff is one of those lucky gentlemen who can sound like Lou Gramm and plays the guitar like Eddie Van Halen. He was the full package. Gave up the life.
Is he still with them then?
No. He left. He went into production. He lives in, I don't know if he lives in Nashville now, but he ended up being a in-demand producer and guitarist. So he's done a lot of work with Shania Twain. In that 90s country piece, Dan was probably your go-to guitarist in Nashville. So he got in that. So he retired from live work. But in 2017, Giant got back together for a one-off gig. Dan played guitar, but they actually brought in a guy to do the singing. And somebody that you and I remember from our days from Kerrang is fronting the band now called Terry Brock. So Terry Brock was in a band called Strange Ways. Again, that melodic rock mid-80s. Great singer. So Terry fronts Giant these days. They put an album out in 2010 called Promised Land, which is not bad. It's pretty good. It's a good album. So that's number one. So looking forward to Giant coming out. The next one, which I thought you might appreciate, which was a muted supergroup with Nathan James from Inglorious, Michael Sweet from Stryper, and 3 alumni from Whitesnake, Tommy Aldridge on drums, Marco Mendoza, who was in Whitesnake in the early 2000s, and Joel Hoekstra. So the 5 of them have got together in a yet unnamed supergroup.
Wow.
And I think that's going to be a bit special because Michael's a great singer. Nathan James is I know you're a big fan of Inglorious.
Yeah.
So those are the two releases which I've gone, ooh, like 2021 could be an interesting year with some new music.
Yeah. That's great. I mean, that is a real, I mean, that's got real potential, that lineup, hasn't it? Great players there. Great singer in Nathan James, who I've met a couple of times actually. He is a huge character. He's a huge guy. You met him as well. I think he was around him. But I first met him actually. He was singing for Uli Roth.
Oh really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, and I went up to him afterwards and said, "Wow, man, you got an incredible voice." And he said, "Oh, thanks very much," which I thought was very, very dignified and very humble of him. And yeah, so that's great. I do like Nathan James. He's a fantastic, amazing singer.
Son of Coverdale.
he is. He's like David Coverdale's, like, the son he never had.
Yes.
Kind of thing. That's good. That's very exciting. I'm looking forward to that. That's great. You've perked me up now. Hearing that. It's great. Yeah. Thank you. So I'll tell you what, something that caught my eye, which will interest you, because I know you're a big fan of The Boss.
I am indeed.
As you call him.
Yes.
Bruce Springsteen. So Bruce Springsteen, as we know, had a quite successful 2020 with his album, his last album. And he has announced that he is looking to go back on the road, which will please huge numbers of people, because I've never seen him, I have to be honest, and you've told me how good he is live.
Yeah.
The fact that he is looking to go back out and tour with the E Street Band will be amazing, I think, for a lot of fans and a lot of people that are big Bruce Springsteen fans. So I thought that was good. I thought it was quite an interesting one. Albeit it's not until next year now, 2022. Yeah. For obvious reasons, but again, something to look forward to, and that'll come around fairly quickly.
It will do.
The tickets will probably go on sale on Monday, that sort of thing, as they often do. £250 each. So I thought that was good. And you like The Boss, don't you? We talked about The Boss at length a couple of times,
and he still enjoys. He enjoys the work. He enjoys playing live. I think I follow a few Facebook pages on The Boss, and it's really funny when we talk to diehard fans, and he'll do like a 4-hour show in Helsinki, and he'll basically play all through the night, and then somebody will go and see him in Germany, and he'll do a 3.5-hour show, and people feel shortchanged because they didn't get a 4-hour show, and you're kind of we are now pretty much set in the expectations are set of us now that if you go to a stadium show, and we in the Rock Arena, we now get a lot of package, the package tours where you get 3 bands. So we're expecting to see a band for 1 hour 10 minutes, maybe an hour and a half.
Yeah,
that's what you expect. And the Boss, the Bruce Springsteen is still willing to put out a 2.5, 3, 4-hour show. More power to him.
Yeah, absolutely. We should go. Maybe we should go, shouldn't we?
I think we should go. I say he'll be playing Hyde Park. If you were to say to me, it would be Hyde Park next year, or has he done Glastonbury?
I'm not sure. I don't think he has, actually.
So that would be a good shout. If he's not done Glastonbury, Bruce at Glastonbury next year.
Yeah, yes. Well, I'm not going to go to Glastonbury because I don't really like the idea of it. But because it's too big. I thought Download was too big. And Glastonbury's about 10 times the size. So, but no, I would like to see him. And as you say, Hyde Park would be great because it's like an hour from where I live. That'd be fantastic.
Oh, well, there you go. But we'll put a Boss.
Dear The Boss.
Yeah, to our American listeners, and we do have subscribers in America. So welcome to our subscribers and listeners over in the US of A. If you've got a way into The Boss in any way at all, Matt would like The Boss to play in Hyde Park next year because it's handy for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Or Croydon, even better. But certainly London would be very acceptable.
We've done is we've put our request out through a podcasting land, and if the Bruce plays in Croydon, or in Hyde Park, Matt, you've made it happen.
Yeah, exactly. We'll know why. Well, there you go. Anyway, so right. Anything else catch your eye, Brian? Well, that's a new catchphrase, Brian.
Yes.
Anything catch your eye, Brian?
Yeah, catch your eye, Brian. The only other thing was just interesting. We were talking about at one of the shows last year. One of our shows last year was how bands and artists are keeping the money flowing in for themselves and for their crew, and and it's interesting that it seems to be a lot of the big artists who've got big back catalogues of material, Lindsey Buckingham and Bob Dylan and Neil Young, have all sold off stakes in their publishing rights to, I'll probably get the name of the company wrong, Hipgnosis. Yeah. And it's like, it seems to be the deals that are being done, Matt. It's like £1.2 billion worth of rights that have been sold. So there must be some money to be made, and I certainly would like to be a pound behind Neil Young and Bob Dylan for what they've coined in this. So interesting.
I was thinking about, and I was thinking about that actually, because you're right. I mean, Neil Young, let's use him as an example. He has sold a share of his 1,180 songs, quite a lot of songs he's written over the years, 1,180 songs. So he sold a share in that catalogue to Hipgnosis for £110 million. So by my reckoning, that they've got to recoup via royalties and licensing and use of it in films and all that sort of stuff. Where there is money to be had, of course. They've got to recoup. They've got to recoup £110 million. Yeah. What's that? About $140 million before they break even. Yeah. It's just incredible. And
what's Neil Young going to do with 110 million? That's what I
know. I mean, maybe he's going to treat his crew to like $1 million each. Who knows? Yeah. But it's a huge amount of money. And when I was reading it reminded me a bit of like your when your folks or your in-laws, they start giving you chunks of money because they can't take it with them, or they start spending money. And you say, well, what are you spending? You're spending my inheritance. And they say, well, yeah. It's our money. We do what we like. And it's a bit like that. They're kind of selling, I don't know. But can you picture, so let's go back to the licensing thing. Can you picture someone, they're using Old Man, which is a great song. Actually my favourite Neil Young song. Yeah. Old Man on E4 daytime advertising. For, I don't know, funeral arrangements or will writing or something. Can you imagine it?
Oh dear goodness.
Maybe not. Anyway, so that's interesting. Well, there's still a lot of money in music.
Must
as we know.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it'll be good to see what companies will try to associate associate a song, and that's why I've always thought it was good that Paul McCartney fought really hard with Michael Jackson when Michael bought the Beatles back catalogue. Some songs are bigger than any brand, and to me but if it's used in the right context, let's think about Wrigley Spearmint Gum and All Right Now.
Yeah.
You think about whenever there was a real resurgence in Free All Right Now whenever it was used in that advertising campaign. Not from maybe you and me, because we love the song. It's in every single dad rock, classic rock album. It's always in there. But if you're somebody who's watching an ad and you're hearing a cool tune and you're hearing Paul Rodgers for the first time on terrestrial telly, they got a new lease of life for that.
Well, yes, there is that side of it. Yeah, absolutely. Good point. But yes, a lot of money sloshing around. And Hipgnosis seem to have a lot of money to spend, clearly, but. We'll see how that plays out. It'll be interesting. Interesting to, as you say, whether we'll start hearing Bob Dylan or Lindsey Buckingham or Neil Young, all sorts of strange situations. Anyway, we'll see. Okay, that was interesting. There's some good stuff there. Thanks for that.
Yes,
certainly very excited about Giant and this new, as yet unnamed supergroup.
Yes.
with current and ex-current members of Whitesnake in, which should be great.
anyway, moving swiftly on as we normally do. As we normally do, our usual feature of my year in rock, which is actually your year in rock.
Okay.
Which this time is 1983. And I always embarrass you when we do our years in rock is to go, so Matt, in 1983, how old were you?
Well, that's a good question, actually. And I'm going to think very hard because when you asked me once before, I got it wrong. I think you asked me how old I was in 1995, and I was a year out. I was a year out of my age.
Uh-huh.
In 1983, I turned 18. So I was 18 for the most of that year because I'm born in April, as you know.
Yes.
I was 18, and it was quite a fun year. My 18th birthday. I can't remember much about it, to be honest with you, for lots of reasons. I went to the Monsters of Rock festival in that year.
First time?
Second time,
okay.
Actually. Maybe we'll talk about that some other time. But that was fun. I say fun. I mean, it was like the Somme. It was, there was music that interrupted the bottle fights, and then it reverted back to bottle fights when the music had stopped. But more about that later, maybe. So 1983. Yeah, I actually, as I always do, I don't think about the albums that I actually bought in that year, and I even flicked back through my vinyl album collection, which is sitting to my right. You can't see it, but it's over there.
Okay. I'll take your word for it.
It's there. So a few albums that I'm going to just quickly talk about, really in no particular order. The first one that popped into my head is an album by Y&T called Mean Streak, which was released in 83. And a lot of people associate, including you, I know this, associate Y&T with Summertime Girls, which is a great kind of feel-good summer song. But they've done some pretty good rock, solid rock songs and albums over the years. And I first came across them in 1982. They supported AC/DC on the For Those About to Rock tour. So I saw them at Wembley Arena. And what I couldn't get over was how good Dave Meniketti was, A, as a singer, and B, as a lead guitarist.
Yeah.
Because in those days, you kind of got one or the other. Angus Young could play, but he didn't sing. David Coverdale could sing, but didn't play, and so on. But Dave Meniketti, the, I say, lead singer and lead guitarist, could do both. A bit like you were describing with Dan Hoff earlier, actually.
Yeah.
Mean Streak, which has got some great stuff on it. The title track, Midnight in Tokyo, just those songs themselves.
Yeah.
It's a really good, solid album, and it was one of those strange situations where, for a change, I stole that album from my sister, Lena, who's a regular listener to the podcast, one of the 10, and for a change, I pinched it off her. I think she took it back eventually, but before then, I did listen to it quite regularly, and I thought it was great. So my first choice is Mean Streak by Y&T.
Great.
Do you remember that?
I do indeed.
You and I have seen them together, I think, at a festival with Ramblin' Man.
We saw them at Ramblin' Man, and I must confess, I was in the Summertime Girls. I think it was about 85 or 86, and that was great, feel good, melodic rock. And it wasn't until we saw them at Ramblin' Man, and I always remember the track that stands out for me at Ramblin' Man, and I will put this on the Spotify playlist, as well as a track from Mean Streaks, if you don't mind. I'm going to pick the track that really cemented me with Y&T as a live outfit was Black Tiger.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so Black Tiger, which was the album released. When you think about the output, Mean Streets was in 83, Black Tiger was in 82. This was a time when bands were putting out albums, pretty regularly. And when I heard Black Tiger at Ramblin' Man, I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it is. It's one of their anthems, isn't it? That's my first choice. Mean Streak by Y&T.
Y&T. Yesterday and Today.
Y&T. Indeed. They shortened it, fortunately, didn't they?
Yeah.
They started off as Yesterday and Today, but they then shortened it to Y&T, which is great. So I like them. I still like them, and I would urge anyone when gigs start again and they come back, and it's really only Dave Meniketti now in the band. Sadly, several of the members have passed away over the years. And I would urge people to go and check out Y&T, and you'll enjoy it, I'm sure.
I agree.
Next one, I couldn't leave this off really, because again, it's a bit like when we talked about Def Leppard in the context of 1987, is Pyromania by Def Leppard, which again, I think it's one of those albums that, it actually gets better with age.
I agree. Yeah.
Or do we get better with age? I don't know. But certainly, I look at it now and I think, oh wow, there's some absolute corkers on that album. I mean, Photograph, I think, everyone knows that song. It gets played a lot. And as you said earlier, it's on a lot of those, dad rock compilations and so on. But there are some great songs on that album. Stage Fright's on there, Foolin' and Rock Till You Drop, which itself is an absolute, killer opener to the shows that they did, a few years ago. Pyromania, produced by Mutt Lange, of course, during his period of production with Leppard. And you can tell, can't you? I mean, it's got that kind of Mutt Lange sort of style about it, which is really kind of brought to, it kind of crystallized finally with Hysteria. But again, just a great rock album, isn't it?
And when you think about, we go back and we keep mentioning this from time to time around the Friday Rock Show with Tommy Vance, and when you read about it in Kerrang, Def Leppard couldn't sell a record in the UK. There was, Pyromania I think Pyromania sold 6 million records, which kept them afloat on Pyromania. When I look at both Hysteria and Pyromania, it's the construction of the album. As you say, you've got Rock Till You Drop, Stage Fright. You can listen to Pyromania beginning to end. You can do that with Hysteria. And that's down to the band, and it's also down to Mutt Lange from a production and a mixing piece. But you couldn't have left Pyromania out. Well, you could have left Pyromania out of 83, but I bet you any money if we'd been put, whenever people would have been commenting on the Facebook page, I'm sure there'd be lots of people putting Pyromania in as a classic album of 83. So great choice.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, actually, funny enough, you should say that. I saw Def Leppard. They were headlining in those days. I saw Def Leppard on the Pyromania tour at Hammersmith. And the first time I saw them, and they were great. I mean, they, again, one of those bands that, are, whenever you see them, they're great live.
Yeah.
And funny you should say that about the sales. They did, chart-wise, they got to number 2 in the US, which again is a humongous market and really was their market in those days, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But only at 18 in the UK, which kind of says it all as to what you were saying. That they couldn't really make it here, but they were huge in the US. So Pyromania, Def Leppard, again, still a good album today.
Yeah.
My next choice, somewhat predictably, because as you know, I may have mentioned this once or twice, Diamond Head is probably my favourite band of all time ever. My favourite all-time band of all time.
Well, you are sitting there, just for the listeners who are, listening into the, who are in the show, you're not seeing this live, but Matt is sitting there with his Diamond Head beanie, his Diamond Head t-shirt, his Diamond Head hoodie, with his Apple AirPods sponsored by Brian Tatler.
Diamond Head.
And if they did a beer, you would be drinking Diamond Head beer. Double Diamond.
Would. Indeed. Yeah, all right. I've got a few t-shirts.
Sorry,
I've actually got a beanie as well. Actually, you're right on all those counts.
Oh, are you? Sorry.
I've got all sorts of paraphernalia. But anyway, yeah. So it's 83 was Diamond Head released Canterbury, which was their third studio album. Quite a departure, actually, as an album. I mean, I like it. Obviously, I liked it at the time. I like it's quite a commercial album. They kind of turned a corner because they didn't know whether they wanted to be. I remember someone at the time saying, Diamond Head, started off as a heavy metal band, and now they can't decide whether they want to be U2 or Queen. And if you listen to the album, there are lots of different influences, quite proggy stuff.
Yeah. In
one respect, you got the Canterbury, the title track itself, and then some real solid rockers, like Making Music and Night of the Swords. But I love it. I mean, it's a strange album actually because it was the beginning of the end for Diamond Head, and it's sadly at the time because it was on vinyl back in '83. The first 20,000, which is probably pretty much all they sold, came out with a pressing error. So I think a couple of the tracks jumped. Despite whatever you did with putting 50 pence pieces on the middle of the thing, as we used to back in those days, it still jumped. So that really took the edge off it for a lot of people. And they fired the drummer and the bass player left during the recording and so on. So yeah, it was quite sad for me as a Diamond Head fan. I mean, I love the album. I still listen to it, but at the time it was a real watershed for Diamond Head. So that's Canterbury. Do you remember that album, Brian? Did that pass you by?
That would have passed me by. In 1983, Matt, this was my first year of buying records. How
old were you in 1983?
I was 14.
No.
I was 14, a babe in arms.
In Limavady.
In Limavady.
Rolling around in your denim jacket. So that's Canterbury. I won't dwell too much on that, but check it out.
I will do.
And if you're doing the Spotify list, Brian, can I suggest Night of the Swords by...
I will put that...
Which is my favourite song off that album. Based on a Michael Moorcock book, the same name, by the way, in true rock style, pinching ideas, turning them into songs. My next choice, talking of being influenced by books, of course, Iron Maiden, Peace of Mind, came out in 1983, which to this day is my favourite Maiden album.
Mine too.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's some absolute belters on there. Short and sweet songs. The Troopers on there, Flight of Icarus, but some absolute gems. And I think quite overlooked as an album because everyone gets excited about Number of the Beast.
Yes.
And then there was, a couple of years later, there was Live After Death and everything. And, of course, we had Maiden's first album, Killers, and blah, blah, blah. But as an album, it was maybe a sort of hidden gem, I suppose, possibly in the Maiden catalogue. But I love it. I mean, it's got some great songs in there. To Tame a Land, which is based on the Dune book, by Frank Herbert, I think it was. Mm-hmm. And Sun and Steel was on there. Some great stuff on there. And it was the first album, I think, and you might correct me on this, where Steve Harris kind of released the songwriting to the rest of the band. And I think Dickinson and Smith wrote Revelations, and Nico McBraid's first album with the band, of course. I mean, can't go wrong. Made in 1983.
You can't. And to be 2 albums in, when you think Bruce joined such a purple patch for Maiden with 82 for Number of the Beast, you still had Clive Burr on the drums. You then do Peace of Mind with Nico McBraid. Like things like Where Eagles Stare, still life. Dave Murray doesn't contribute as prolifically as Adrian Smith and Steve Harris and Bruce Dickinson, but whenever Dave Murray chucks something in, it's pretty damn good. So as an album, it's brilliant. And as you say, it's not all Steve Harris's writing, and you can see Bruce and Flight of Icarus on that album. I would probably say Flight of Icarus would have been my favorite single off that album. You're in good company because in Kerrang in 1983, Peace of Mind was actually voted in the top 100. I think it was the top albums of all time. Peace of Mind was actually number 1.
Oh, really?
And number 2 was Number of the Beast. So Maiden,
really?
So Maiden, Maiden were on a rich vein of form. So
yeah, it is absolutely. I would recommend that as a great piece of work from that era. Yeah. And then finally, and I know you like this album, and you and I have seen this band a few times.
We have.
ZZ Top, Eliminator. So I thought it was 82, but it was 83. And again, we talked about a few albums that, within themselves are kind of almost greatest hits albums. And this is no exception. It's probably the peak for ZZ Top, I would say. The commercial peak, certainly.
Absolutely.
But the album itself, you look down the song list, and I was doing that today. I looked down the actual, the vinyls, and there's obviously you've got Give Me All Your Lovins on there, and Sharp Dressed Man, but TV Dinners is on there, Legs, Got Me Under Pressure. There's it's as I say, it's the greatest hits album in itself, and so ZZ Top, one of those rare bands that have kind of largely kept the same lineup, and I think they've maybe had a few additional members early on, but have largely been the same three guys since 1970 or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Just phenomenal. And again, if you see them live, and I saw them, funny enough, strange enough, talking about Donington 83, I saw them at their festival. It was a strange festival because it had a real eclectic mix, but they were on the bill. And yeah, I mean, they probably haven't, their stage show hasn't changed much since then. You know, very kind of choreographed, and the rotating guitars and all the rest of it. But yeah, so ZZ Top, Eliminator.
And when you
great.
Absolutely. And do you remember the trilogy? You know, you had the "Gimme All Your Lovin'" video, and then you could have watched on MTV "Gimme All Your Lovin'," then followed straight up by "Sharp Dressed Man," and then followed straight into "Legs," and you had that sort of ZZ Top trilogy. But one of my favorite tracks, and again, I got into ZZ Top on the Eliminator album, is "I Need You Tonight," which is a really slow blues, but really, it's just Billy Gibbons and his smoky voice sounded really good. But interestingly, I didn't know that they were on the bill in Donington in 83. By 85, they headlined Donington, and they must have toured. I can imagine they would have been on the road touring Eliminator for quite a significant amount. You think about it. Eliminator came out in 83, Afterburner, which was the new album, which came out in 85. They were probably selling oodles of records on Eliminator, and that's really what got them headliner status for Donington. So it's one of those albums where it's pretty much it's a greatest hits. No,
it is. So that was 83, Brian.
Yeah,
for me.
Yeah,
the more I think about it, I did enjoy that year. So the highlight was Donington 83, which I can't remember much about apart from being a bit of a war of bottle fights, interrupted by bands playing. And I also saw the Scorpions, and as I said earlier, I saw Def Leppard that year, both at Hammersmith Odeon. So that's 83. Any recollections for you from that year?
As a 14-year-old, mummy and daddy still wouldn't let me go to gigs. It wasn't until 1984 where I can go. I was able to go and see a band live. But 83, two albums set out for me in 1983. Obviously the first proper album that I ever bought in cassette and drove my mum and dad nuts. Whenever we were on camping holidays and I had my little ghetto blaster and I was playing Thunder Lightning by Thin Lizzy, which is my first proper album with John Sykes. And it's just a special album for me. I know it's Cold Sweat, Baby Please Don't Go, Sun Goes Down, and to then get to see them on the Sight. Remember they did Sight and Sound? Yeah, you did Sight and Sound on the BBC with Pete Drummond. Pete Drummond was doing that, and Thin Lizzy did it, and Gary Moore did it, and that was the first time I saw Thin Lizzy live on telly, and I was hooked from then. So Thunder Lightning for me would be an album. The debut release, and again, I'm 14 years of age, so I didn't have the knowledge that you had about certain bands that were maybe releasing Heaven and Hell in 1980, or he was the lead singer in Rainbow in 1976. So whenever Ronnie James Dio dropped Holy Diver, I was like, oh my God, who's this amazing new singer? So Dio's Holy Diver, as much as we would say I would say Back in Black is the perfect rock album. If you were to say to me what the perfect metal album is, I would go with Holy Diver. Holy Diver.
Good choice.
Yeah.
Good choice.
Yeah. So those are my two notables for 1983. I would go with Holy Diver and obviously Thin Lizzy's. And you, to be fair, some of the ones that you've mentioned as well too through yours are ones which I was listening to and had bought in 1983. But Holy Diver for me was 1983. And you were at Donington and you saw that show.
I think it was their first UK appearance at Donington 83. I've got a feeling it was, because obviously it was very early in their career as a band. Featuring on guitar, of course. How could we forget?
How could we get it? Is it it's your turn. Who was the guitarist again?
It was Sir Vivian, of course, Sir Vivian Campbell.
Yeah.
The great Vivian. Yeah, I mean, it was a great album, and still is. I mean, as you say, it's one of those that stands up well now. Stand up and shout, and don't talk to strangers, and so on. Just some just classics, really. Again, dare I say, kind of a greatest hits in itself. We must stop using that expression. Right, shall we?
We maybe have to do a show on what are the greatest hits albums.
We could do
that were actually greatest hits albums.
The greatest hits of the greatest hits.
Yes.
I need to give you a year, Brian.
Oh, you do?
I do, and I am going to bring you into the 90s.
Okay.
I'm going to give you 1992 to talk to us about next time.
Oh, that's an interesting year, 92.
Well, that's why I chose it.
Yeah. Oh, I could get.
So, are you accepting the challenge?
I am accepting the challenge of 1992. I will desperately go quickly to see which King's X albums were released in 1992.
Oh, blimey!
I'm only joking.
I'll let you talk about Thin Lizzy, which we're not supposed to, but so fine. Anyway, 1992.
Thank you.
Back to you. So are we talking hidden gems now?
We can,
or live albums.
Let's do live albums. Let's talk about live albums.
A couple of times over the last few weeks, we occasionally have touched upon live albums, and I think once or twice we said, we should actually talk about live albums and our favourite live albums on a podcast.
Yes.
So that's what we're doing, isn't it?
Yes.
We're going to have a little chat about our favourite live, and I've given it some thought, and you've given it some thought, and we'll just have a sort of throw them out there. I think the thing with live albums is, and we already put it on the Facebook page today, and a lot of people come back with their own favourite live albums, and again, an eclectic mix already.
Yeah.
From Frank Zappa to Thin Lizzy,
Dire Straits.
Dire Straits was in there as well, and which is great. I think the thing with live albums is, and when we were talking about it, you and I, just before we kind of came on air, as it were,
at our planning meeting.
At our planning meeting. The thing with live albums is I think they are an eclectic mix by their very nature, of course, and also they mean different things to different people.
Yeah.
I mean, my favourite live album, and we'll talk about it in a minute, one of my favourite live albums is Unleashed in the East by Judas Priest. Now, when I first listened to it in 1979, I'd never seen Judas Priest. I'd really not even heard of them apart from a couple of singles. But I looked at the album cover and thought, wow, look at these guys, leather, motorbike, and everything. I've got to check these guys out. And, it's quite evocative in a way. And the era of vinyl with the gatefolds and or the live picture or whatever, it really inspired you to go and see these bands. And, that's the way it worked to some extent. But, I think you touched upon it when we were speaking about it before, is that, you listen to a live album, and if you feel like you're at the concert or you want to be at that concert, then that says it all, doesn't it? So live albums, I remember back in the late 70s, early 80s, there were loads of live albums coming out. And it kind of goes back to, I think, Kiss and Peter Frampton were probably responsible, because in 75 and 76, they released Kiss Alive and Frampton Comes Alive. And I think, and subsequent to then, there were lots of live albums released. Everyone thought, well, this is great, gives us a break from recording. We can pick up some more songs. We can get this out and maybe promote people to come and see us and so on. So it's a great tool in one respect, or in that respect. So there's loads to choose from. Yeah, it was kind of rich pickings back in the late 70s, and I went through a period of buying a lot of live albums, and a few that stand out. I mentioned Strangers in the Night a lot. Strangers in the Night by UFO. We talked about that last time. I won't dwell on that. Again, one of my favourite live albums, and it was really to your point, was probably a real boost for UFO as a band, and led them on to the kind of success in the early 80s. And that in itself is probably the most famous album, B, they're probably the best-selling album, Strangers in the Night.
Mm.
Unleashed in the East by Judas Priest, again, was my introduction to Judas Priest. And again, I still listen to it to this day, even though it's 41 odd years old. I played it to death at the time. It's just one of those albums that stands up really well. Very exciting, recorded most of it in Japan. There was, as was the case, and probably still is the case with live albums, quite a lot of overdubbing and tidying up and so on. But we won't go into that. But as a live album, it's great.
Yeah.
And so that was one that caught my eye, or that I remembered rather.
Yeah.
Out of the same era, All the World's a Stage by Rush. Again, I think to your point, Rush had gone through that period in the sort of early to mid 70s where, they kind of were ebbing and flowing in terms of success. 2112 Against All the Odds in 76, I think it was released, was a success as a concept album. And All the World's a Stage kind of built around that Rush album being 2112 being played live.
Yeah.
And again, All the World's a Stage, very much of its time, recorded in Canada, a hometown gig for Rush. It really didn't get much better for them.
But quite an iconic. With some great live albums, you have some great live covers. And whenever you say All the World's a Stage, in terms of All the World's a Stage, I can straight away see the album cover.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never, I do not own Unleashed in the East by Judas Priest, but I know the cover of that album. It's when you've got a great live album or an interesting live cover, and then it backs it up with the product as well too, you kind of go, well, there you go. And it's the best advert for a band to say, well, here's a live album, come and see us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And then finally, just one that, again, I still listen to, and again, it's one of my favorite live albums, also recorded in Japan, as was the case quite often with live albums. If you think about it, with Purple and
Cheap Trick. No. Well, okay. Yeah, there's one.
And obviously Priest.
There's one, sorry to digress, but there's sometimes Japan and the recording of a live album can be a double-edged sword. And I've got two albums from one band which catalogues a band at its prime, and we're talking about Deep Purple's Made in Japan, which is Mark II at its finest. And unfortunately, and this person shall remain nameless, but they gave it and gifted it to me many, many years ago on vinyl. It's Deep Purple Mark IV's last concert in Japan with Tommy Bolin.
Oh, right.
And that is the album where Tommy Bolin, bless him, had his, where they had to restring the guitar in open tuning so that he played it. He'd had a problem with his arm. That's all we'll say. We had a problem with his arm, and they basically tuned his guitar to an open chord, and he basically moved his finger up and down to play it. Basically, John Lord did Tommy Bolin's job that night. I have that album, and it's one where you go, I can't listen to it because it's the demise of it's basically cataloguing the demise of what was once an amazing band. But hey ho, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that's fine. And I was just going to mention One Night at Budokan by Michael Schenker Group, which again, it must be nearly 40 years old now, but again, well worth a listen. Capturing the Michael Schenker Group at their peak. Cozy Powell on drums, Paul Raymond, obviously Schenker himself, Chris Glenn, and Gary Barden. So those are my kind of top 3 or 4. They'll probably change if they ask me tomorrow, Brian, to be honest with you. How about you? What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm just going to say this for the listeners, is when Matt and I were pulling together the idea of live albums, I actually was up at 24. So the show could have been lasting 6 hours, but Matt said, right, we need to get it down to your top 3. So so there. All I'm saying is that over the years, there's been some amazing live albums that have come out. So for me, the first album on my list, which is probably my favorite live album, is Live in the Heart of the City by Whitesnake. 1980 probably catalogues the band at their. It's the Ready and Willing lineup. It's the three ex-members of Purple: Ian Pace, John Lord, David Coverdale, with Mickey Moody, Bernie Marsden, and Neil Murray, who I always call a nice, quiet Englishman, but you might quite. Yeah, is he an Englishman? Is he? Tell us in the comments. He's Scottish. But to me, a great live album has got to be something that, if you put the album on, you turn the lights off. I genuinely felt I was in the Hammersmith Odeon, and it's the fact that they keep in all of the chat, and it just feels live, and the band sounded great, and you get a good live feel. So live in the Heart of the City is a good point in time for Whitesnake for me. Yeah, it's been released, and it's got some Purple material in it as well too, and it's nice. Some of that material might just take your life, Mistreated. They made it Whitesnake. They made it bluesy. They made it, and it worked. And Bernie Marsden is covering some of Glenn Hughes's parts, and it really worked as a band. So my first choice of a great live album would be Live in the Heart of the City, and the track that I'm going to put on the Spotify playlist would be Ain't Gonna Cry No More, because I think that just catalogues what a great band they sound. The keyboards, Coverdale's singing high range when he needs to. It's really good. So that's my number 1. My second choice is it's an album from 1992-93. I thought I'll move it up, and this is a band that I think this is a band who I think really had a hard time live with their original singer, in terms of Mr. David Lee Roth. So I don't think, Van Halen never put any live product out while Dave was in the band.
No.
And they obviously did it with the live at the Tokyo Dome in 2000 and, in the late 2000s. But if you want to hear, again, a band in a Norma Dome in America at the top of their powers, I would say give Van Halen Live Right Here, Right Now, which is the double album, engineered and produced by Andy Jones, but it is basically Van Halen or Van Hagar, whatever you want to call it, at the peak of their powers. You've got Pound Cake, you've got covers of Won't Get Fooled Again, but the production value on that album, Eddie plays a guitar solo. There's a little bit of acoustic with Sammy. You even hear some of the chat that Sammy has with the audience, where I can remember somebody's trying to advertise a bar. He's trying to give a T-shirt or something up, and please, come to our bar after the show. It's just a great live album. Which again, when I stuck it on in CD, I'm going, that captures Van Halen live, and that really. I can't recommend it highly enough as a great band who often got slated for when Dave was in the band. Dave's a showman. Is he a singer? When you said, I always remember you saying when we talked about Van Halen and Van Hagar in our first episode, Van Halen moved up in professionalism and performance wise. And that's captured in Right Here, Right Now, which is a double album. Go and check it out, people. It is brilliant. If you were to pick a track, Matt, off that album, which one would you pick?
You mentioned Pound Cake earlier. I love that song.
Yeah.
So because I love that album from Norfolk Kind of Knowledge. So yeah. I would say, Pound Cake or maybe Top of the World. It's as you say, great album, and it didn't rely too much on the kind of early Van Halen catalog, did it?
No. You get Panama and Jump in it, but
yeah,
they shine.
Good choice. Good choice.
And my final choice, which is an album which I'm not sure if it's still available. I think you can buy it you maybe buy it through Thunder's online store. Certainly you can't. I don't think we'll be able to stream it for you people, so I'll have to pick another track from this band live. But my final album of the three, again, it made me feel like I was in the room, which was Thunder Live. It was released in 1998. It was when Thunder were in 98. They were kind of winding up the band, and they recorded 4 nights. I think they did 4 nights in the Wolfram Hall, and basically, it's a double live albums, and I really got a sense of good feel for the band. There's some acoustic stuff on it, and Thunder it's one of these things where you're cataloging a band who's just about to finish up, and they put out a live album, and you're going, what a way to go out. So it's a double album. I remember getting it, and I just the second track in the album, Welcome to the Party is the opening track, and then I think the second track is Higher Ground.
Yeah.
And the way in which the band, the band start off with a little intro. Danny then introduces the evening, has a bit of chat. You can hear the crowd, and then they just punch in with Higher Ground, and I genuinely felt I was there. So it probably won't make it won't make the Rolling Stone 100 best live albums, and it's not going to be up there with Live and Dangerous and the Allman Brothers live at the Fillmore. But for my criteria of a live album is, I wish I'd seen Thunder on that tour. I'd wish I'd seen Van Halen on that tour. I wish I'd seen Whitesnake. And that to me is if a live album can capture when a band was and make me feel I was at the gig and I really wanted to be, then the live album works for me. So that's my 3 in terms of album.
Yeah, good choices, Brian. Yeah, some great choices there. And as we said earlier, we probably, if we had this conversation tomorrow, we'd probably come up with another few into the bargain. But some great choices there, my friend.
There we go. So we're coming to the the back end of the show, and we always like to finish
up.
Quickly.
That's gone quick, hasn't it? Don't you think it's gone quick?
I think it has. It's for the first one for the year. First one for the year.
So we're going to finish off on Hidden Gems.
We are indeed.
I think. And do you want me to go first? Or should I go first?
I'll go first.
Okay,
I'll go first.
Good.
So
After you then.
So my hidden gem this time, and usually we pick either an album or a song, or so my hidden gem is going to be a person. So I'm going to kick this off with a quiz question for you, Matthew. So in 1985-86, in the mid '80s, Robert Palmer released his album Riptide, and the big single off Riptide was
Addicted to Love, Brian, of course.
It's Addicted to Love. It was indeed. No prompting at all. The stunt guitar player, famous guitar player who played in an 80s band, played. Who can you guess who the lead guitarist was on Robert Palmer's single for Addicted to Love?
Addicted to Love. I'm thinking, wasn't Steve Lukather, was it?
No. He
was on Michael Jackson stuff, wasn't he?
He was on Michael Jackson stuff.
I don't know.
Okay, so it was Andy Taylor from Duran Duran.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So my hidden gem this week, or for this episode, is Andy Taylor. And the reason why I'm picking Andy Taylor is Andy's been out of the music business for the last 10 years, and he's just coming back with some new material. Again, COVID-19 and best laid plans. He was actually had released some material 2019, and was actually out on and doing some shows with the guys from Reef. So he was putting himself back out again. So my hidden gem albums this week are both associated with Andy Taylor. The first one is his first solo album that he released in '87, which is an album called Thunder. And the lead-off single on that was a single called I Might Lie. He recorded it with Steve Jones from the Sex Pistols It's a real good stomping rock album, and you will be surprised how good. He's a very good guitarist, but how good a singer Andy Taylor is. So check out Thunder by Andy Taylor. And straight after that, after he'd toured that album, he then went into the studio and co-wrote Rod Stewart's album Out of Order, which is a great rocking album. I know Rod in his later career does the ballads in the American Songbook and he's an amazing voice. But his rock album of the 80s, which was Out of Order, is one to check out. There's Wild Horses, Lost in You, fantastic album. So my hidden gem is Andy Taylor. Check out his work with Rod Stewart on Out of Order, and check out his solo album, which is called Thunder. And for you, young man, what's your hidden gem for this episode for everybody?
Well, I am going to go with a live album, actually. Surprisingly enough. We were talking about live albums earlier, but we haven't talked too much about Journey as a band, and so I thought I'd rectify that issue. And I'm going to go with a live album that Journey put out in I think it's about 81. It was accompanied by a live film, so you can find the live version of this album probably on YouTube.
Okay.
And it's Journey's a live album, live in Houston, 81 on the Escape tour. So that's my hidden gem. Do you know it? Do you know it?
Oh man, what? Do you know what, ladies and gentlemen? Sometimes it's lovely to be trumped ostensibly when you pick Andy Taylor and your co-host comes in with Journey's live album from 1981 on the Escape tour. I doffed my hat to you, my friend. That is just. Sorry, this is your album. You talk.
Go for it. No, go for it. No.
That is so. Oh, it just brings back so many. When you talk about an album, Escape, again, it's so great. And to have it catalogued and chronicled in that Houston album, is great. They're great live. No, it's oh wow! I don't know which tracks I'm going to choose.
I'll give you one. I'll give you Line of Fire.
Yes.
Is it kind of blends in quite nicely with Escape, the song, into Line of Fire. It's. I mean, I remember watching it on TV, late night TV at the time, and thought, wow, this is just great. And I still do. I've got it on DVD. I've got the live album, CD and so on.
Did you ever get to see them? Gem. Did you ever get to see Journey with Steve Perry?
No, I didn't. I'm afraid. Again, it's one of those quite a regret, actually. I would have liked to.
Yeah.
I don't think they particularly toured the UK that often during Steve Perry's time.
Yeah.
Because he's moved on now, of course. So no, I never got to see them rather. So, but yeah, I would recommend that's my hidden gem for this week. Live in Houston, 1981, Journey on the Escape tour. And with that, my friend, you all right? Are you still stunned by that? I can tell.
It's one of those ones where I genuinely, I'm going to dig out. I haven't listened to Journey in such a long time. And ironically, Matt, if you don't mind me saying, when I was thinking about a hidden gem album for this evening, I actually was toying with putting in Bad English's first album.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So I was thinking about Journey-ish type things, and you've just trumped me with that album. That's great. So what a great way to sign off our first show for 2021.
Indeed.
Always good to catch up with you, mate.
You too, my friend.
And we shall speak in a couple of weeks. So it's a goodbye from me.
And it's a goodbye from him.
All right.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll catch up soon. Cheers, Brian.
All right. Cheers, Matt. See you later. Bye now. For Those About to Pod, We Salute You is a Mealy Rogers media production. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe. We'll see you next time.